I'm Ryan. Transgender people exist.
I'm Ryan. They certainly do. We'll discuss more when we return to beer and politics.
You know, Betty White really is the greatest Golden Girl.
Choosy parents choose Jif.
He's so mean.
He really is.
Hey Ryan, are we out of partisan again? Welcome to Beer and Politics. We are your adorable hosts, Ryan and Ryan. Today we're going to be discussing transgender issues. But before we do, Madam Brewmaster, what do we have on tap today?
Today we have chocolate chip cookie dough ale from New Belgium Brewing and Ben & Jerry's.
So this here is a collaboration between New Belgium Brewing and Ben & Jerry's. Yes, the ice cream Ben & Jerry's. This beer is around 6% alcohol and is supposed to taste like their chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream. What do you think?
Yeah, they nailed it. I'm not sure you would have any idea this was 6% alcohol. And it tastes remarkably like chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream.
Yeah, it is crazy. So this is actually also brewed with vanilla and chocolate. This barely tastes like a beer. Like
right. I carbonated. Really.
I couldn't tell you that there are hops in this, but it absolutely tastes like chocolate chip cookie dough. This is definitely a dessert sort of beer.
Yes, you don't have a bunch of these ever.
But they, I will say, spot on. And I can't believe how light this beer is for the depth of flavor.
So thank you very much. We appreciate your delicious beer for our taste buds today. Now on to transgender issues.
All right, so the transgender issues are sort of back in the spotlight because Trump brought it back with his reversal or his direction from the Department of Education to sort of reverse Obama's guidance when it comes to transgenders in students, in schools, not so much in students, but weird. So to give you a little history about where we are and why they're in the schools in general, the orders, it starts back with the Higher Education Act of 1965. This provides federal funding to colleges and universities. Now, Richard Nixon in 1972 signed amendments to this act. One of the amendments, the one that we're dealing with here, is Title IX. Title IX is a federal law that prohibits the discrimination against students based on sex. And it will it applies to any federally funded program, anything at all. So fast forward to 2016, the Department of Education under Obama issues guidance saying that now transgender students will be protected under Title IX. So what this does effectively is allow transgender students to use the bathrooms that align with their gender identity. 2017, just recently, Donald Trump's Department of Education rescinded that guidance. They actually they reversed the guidance and they said they didn't provide any new guidance. So what this has done effectively is removed that protected status from transgender students under Title IX.
So there's no requirement for schools to provide them with bathrooms that meet their gender identity.
Correct. Or allow them to use the existing bathrooms that do align.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. So we recognize that there are really two headings at the forefront right now for transgender issues to fall under. One is this kind of school-related one, and the other is safety. Now, with regards to school and children and transgender issues and identity, we recognize that that is a complex issue because we're trying to help children, people under the ages of 18, across a broad spectrum of ages at that point. We're trying to help them make a decision that they may not be emotionally, physiologically, or even physically capable of making at this point. And we think that that issue and that challenge would be better served with a complete episode where we do more research and can be more thoughtful in our response to that. So today we're really talking about the safety aspect.
So the safety aspect actually brings us to the bathroom bills. It's what they're being called, laws like North Carolina's HB2. We're going to talk about that one here a little bit specifically today. So what we also want to point out is that the lawmakers who make these laws are not saying that transgendered people are going into the bathrooms and assaulting women. That's not what they're saying. They are saying that sex predators are going to take advantage of the laxity of these laws, and they're going to assault women in public bathrooms. They're saying that laws like HB2 are necessary to protect women because without them, people will exploit the system for their own sexual gratification.
So that's a very specific scenario that they're trying to protect people against. And so we wanted to look statistically at the likelihood that someone would find themselves in that scenario, as well as examine what type of recourse they would have should they find themselves in that scenario. So what is the law providing them that they may or may not have today? So first thing we want to do was we want to be generous with our assumptions and our statistics and our ratios. We wanted to provide the legislature the benefit of the doubt in finding compelling interest to have these laws. So any percentage we're giving we think is extremely inflated and generous, and we're going to kind of narrow it down to the point of the scenario that they're protecting North Carolinians against. And I think it's important to note that in a given year, fewer than 100,000 North Carolinians will suffer from a violent crime. So that's more than just sexual crimes, right? That could actually be murder. It could be armed robbery, that kind of thing. So fewer than 100,000. So we thought if we start with, let's say, the entire population of North Carolina, and then narrow it down from there, that again, we would give the benefit of the doubt to the legislature in what they're doing. So the first thing we did was we said, let's start with North Carolina. Approximately 10 million people exist in North Carolina.
So we know that also, obviously, that's not enough. We know that this law is not designed to protect men in restrooms, because that's not what the law's designed to do. No one's talking about that. It is designed specifically to protect women in women's restrooms.
So that's 50% of the population.
Yep, 50%.
And then we said, okay, well, it's not enough to just be a North Carolinian or a woman. She must indeed be in a public restroom. And so we said about 50% of the time, on a given day, a woman will be in a public restroom.
Okay. We're going to go a little further, because it can't just be a public restroom. You need to be a North Carolinian, you need to be a woman, you need to be in a public restroom, but that public restroom has to be multi-stalled, because if it is in fact a single stall, you've probably got the door locked behind you, and at that point it is essentially a private restroom. And we're saying that of that, it's going to be about 50% of the restrooms will be multi-stall.
There you go. So still not enough. You need to be a North Carolinian. You need to be a woman. You need to be in a public restroom. You need to be in a public restroom that is multi-stalled, and then a man must walk in. And we're going to say that about 1% of the time, a man will walk into a woman's restroom. And we've talked about this. We both can count on one of our hands how many times we've walked into a woman's restroom in our entire lifetime.
Yeah, so we think that is a very generous.
Right.
Now what you can see from the graph is that we're getting to a really, really small sliver. So we're going to zoom in here so that we can more accurately see what we're talking about now. Because keep in mind, it's not enough to be a North Carolinian. You must also be a woman in a public restroom that has multiple stalls when a man walks in, and you must be alone with the man. We know that one of the things that makes sex crimes and rape especially difficult to prosecute is the fact that there's only two people present, the victim and the assailant. So if there is a third person, if you are not alone, your chances are drastically reduced. So we said the chances are that you're going to be alone is 25% of the time.
And we think that is extraordinarily generous, that 25% of the time you're going to be alone with a man in that scenario. All right, but that's still not enough. We're not there yet. You need to be a North Carolinian. You need to be a woman. You need to be in a public restroom. It has to be multi-stalled. A man must walk in. You must be alone with the man, and the man must be dressed like a woman. And we say, we're going to say about 1% of the time, a man will be dressed like a woman in that scenario.
And we came up with that. We thought, okay, so we know about 0.3% of the population in the U.S. is transgender. So we said, okay, 3 times as many as that. And that's where we'll go for this 1% number. So we think, again, that is quite generous. Oh, and why is it important that they're dressed like a woman?
Because that is what the law is trying to protect us from. People taking advantage of the transgender, if you will, lifestyle.
Okay.
And pretending to be transgender. So it would be a man dressed like a woman going into that bathroom.
Okay.
Because if it was a woman, the law wouldn't apply.
Right. Okay. So we're still not there. We're going to narrow it down a bit more. You must be North Carolinian, a woman, in a public restroom that has multiple stalls. A man must walk in. You must be alone with the man. The man must be dressed as a woman, and the man must look like a man dressed like a woman. Because if it's a man that's dressed like a woman, but looks like a woman, you're not going to say anything because you won't know, because it looks like a woman, right?
That's right. You don't speak up when someone who you think should be there is there.
Correct. And so, again, being generous, we're going to say 50% of the time, the person looks like a man. Looks like a man, dressed like a woman.
And we're still not there. So now, we're going to zoom in even a little bit further here, because we are really getting down to a very focused point. All right, so it's still too hard to see without zooming in. So, you have to be a North Carolinian. You have to be a woman. You have to be in a public restroom that has multiple stalls. When a man walks in that you happen to be alone with, the man is dressed like a woman. You can tell that is indeed a man and not a woman, and then that person actually has to want to assault you. And I think we're being pretty generous here as well when we say, we're going to say 10% of the time, that person wants to assault the woman in the back.
And not quite there. So we got to get a little bit further. All right, so remember, you're a North Carolinian, you're a woman. You're in a public restroom with multiple stalls. When a man walks in, you're alone with that man. That man is dressed like a woman. The man looks like a man dressed like a woman. The man wants to assault you, and that man is a stranger.
Why does he have to be a stranger?
Here's the thing. If you know the person when they walk into the public restroom, you're not going to scream bloody murder. Your reaction will be different. You might say, hey, what are you doing in here? Get out. Or maybe you're out at the club with him that night, and you know who he is. And so this is the reason. And what we said 20% of the time, that man's going to be a stranger.
And we know that statistically, women are assaulted by people they know more like 90% of the time. So we were extra generous here, and we said that's only 80%.
And so when you look at all of that, when you look at all those numbers together, North Carolinian woman, go on down the list, what you're left with is starting with a pool of 10 million people. In any given day, any given scenario, you end up with 0.132 women who are actually affected by this law.
Wow.
On any given day. And for those of you who are percentage fans like I am, that actually comes out to 0.03%. So this is, I want you to think about this here. We're talking about a law that provides, by the way, this isn't a law that protects, because it's already illegal to rape someone in a bathroom. It's already illegal to sexually assault someone in a bathroom. So what this does, and it's not like it's stationing police outside of every room so that if something happens they can run in and save you. This provides an additional level of legal recourse. And so it's providing an additional level of legal recourse in about 0.03% of the occasions. And what it does is it criminalizes the standard daily routine of roughly 30,000 North Carolinians.
So it criminalizes 30,000 people for what?
To protect 0.3125.
Do we have other laws that work that way?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And actually, if we want to talk about silly laws, we know, as we had talked about just a second ago, that most women are assaulted by men they know. 90%, north of 90%. So if you wanted a law that would actually protect women against men, you could make a law saying it's illegal for men to ask women out. Or it's illegal to go on a date with them. Because if you want to protect women from men, the best way to do that is to not let them know the men in the first place.
But we don't do that.
No, why not?
Because that'd be silly.
It is a very silly rule.
Because we have to live with these people.
Yes, this is a very silly rule. And so I think I think especially if you claim to be a conservative, especially a small government conservative, I don't see how this situation passes the muster of compelling interest. What is the state's compelling interest to step in and create a law surrounding this? And I just don't see it.
I don't either. And I guess the last thing I'd like to point out is one of the reasons that some people would say this law is in place is because without it, women would somehow be less vigilant in the bathroom with people coming in that are men that dress as women, that they wouldn't take notice of those people. And, I'm not a woman. I assume, Ryan, you're not a woman.
That's true.
But I've known quite a few, and every single one of them I have met was taught at a very early age that when you leave your house, you are to be vigilant at all times. For many reasons, but one of which is that men are animals and we are predators. And that is something they need to be wary about and cognizant of. And again, this isn't victim shaming. This is just a fact of reality for women in our world right now.
And it's also not an excuse for the men that are monsters.
Right.
It's not saying we need to, the idea of ignoring a reality to promote policy is a bad thing.
Right.
You can do both at the same time. You can understand the reality that men are the largest danger and still push for policies that are not terrible.
Right. If someone who doesn't belong walks into a women's bathroom, women take notice. And they're vigilant.
Last call.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks for watching us today.
We do have a podcast now.
We do. It's on SoundCloud. You can subscribe. It's Beer and Politics. Shocker.
Yep. So thank you so much. Try the beer. Have
Yeah.
it with dessert. And we'll see you next time. And just remember, it's just beer.
Politics. It really does taste like a chocolate chip cookie.
It really is. Yep.